What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Shooting the Shit Uncensored. I'm your host, the dad bod god, the bald, the beard, and the fucking beautiful Piers Austin. And tonight, my guest, the very special guest that we have on this evening, the sniper of the skies, the one and only Robbie fucking Eagles is in the house. And I'm really excited to have Robbie on. This has been a long time coming, getting Mr. Eagles on the show. And I'm super excited to have a conversation with him. But before we get into it, I need to take a quick second to talk about Sleefs.com. Now, Sleefs.com is your one-stop shop for all your athletic wear and gear. They've got armbands, compression pants, compression shorts, headbands, boots, mouth guards, and they've even got those dirty boxes you always hear me raving about. Guys, now let me tell you something. These dirty boxes, they stay dry, they stay fresh. They've got funky designs on the front of them to keep that special person in your life giggling. So, guys, go and check out Sleeps.com. Check out those dirty boxes. Use that promo code MWAPOD to get a 10% discount on your final purchase. Also, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone, wherever you are finding us, I appreciate you. If you're tuning in on YouTube, please like, share, subscribe, leave us a comment. I appreciate it. If you're listening on a podcast platform, please give us a 5-star review. It helps with our analytics, helps us reach more amazing people with more amazing conversations with amazing fucking guests like tonight's guest, Robbie Eagles. So without further ado, let's get in to my conversation with the one and only Robbie fucking Eagles. Robbie Eagles in the house on Shooting the Shit Uncensored. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Piers. And I'm glad to be on a show called Shooting the Shit because the sniper definitely shoots some shit from time to time.
That's it, man. I feel like this has been a long time coming. I'm really excited to have you on. Again, thank you so much for giving up your time for my guests and myself to have this great conversation. I really do appreciate it. Man, getting into it, we were just talking before we went live about the Roundhouse show. 600 people strong inside that venue. It was absolutely amazing. The atmosphere was really, really electric. It was something that I've personally never really felt before at a wrestling show before. From your perspective, how was everyone's, nerves, anxiety leading up to that show? Because it was a really big deal for you guys.
There was a lot of nerves and anxiety across the board for the PWA roster, for the staff, for the production team, for everyone that was involved. So, from a wrestler's perspective, it was fairly nerve-wracking for everyone, myself included. And I'm not one of those people that doesn't get nervous. It's just sometimes it's worse than it is others. So, the Roundhouse, such a special venue for me. Obviously, through my career in wrestling, the last time that wrestling took place there was a very special night for me in New Japan Pro Wrestling. So I changed from Bullet Club to Chaos. I was part of the main event, sharing the ring with Jay White, Bad Luck Fale, Will Ospreay, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Kazuchika Okada. So it doesn't get any bigger than that. But arguably, last Friday night, from top to bottom, felt like a bigger deal because it was entirely on us. And yes, we had Shingo Takagi in the house, so we did have New Japan representation, as well as, Bad Luck Fale being there unannounced, which was a little worrying and concerning from my end. I didn't want to run into him backstage, and I made sure not to. But from the local perspective, I've been with PWA for my entire career, and to see where we started and to where we've gone, it really is. I put it on Twitter. I said it was the proudest night of my life because I was just so proud of how everyone did, how everyone performed, how the show ran from start to finish, and the atmosphere in that room. I had friends that hadn't seen us for almost 10 years from, small community halls that came, and this was their first time coming back. And it's a huge difference. Like, I didn't want it to just be a small difference of, oh, the lights look better, or it sounds better, or it's got a bigger stage, or there's a video on the stage now. I wanted them to notice that it's a massive leap from where we came from. And that's something that I'll always hold, very close to my heart. And it's been such an incredible journey to be a part of it and to help train the younger talent and see them from their first day to, matches like Cherry Stevens versus Jimmy Townsend. It's hard not to get choked up just talking about it now.
It's funny because, like, and I think I said this when I was talking to Jess Troy the other week, Cherry Stevens, I feel like a lot of fans probably have seen her grow up in a way in front of their eyes, like go from, starting off as a rookie and then sort of going through into the prefects and now being, I think, really an empowering character for a lot of people. Like I said, I really feel like as the fans, we've been able to witness her grow and evolve, not only as a performer, but also as a person, really.
Yeah, she's definitely come leaps and bounds. She actually missed the group tryout, and kind of asked, and it wasn't her directly, but someone else that she knows that's not in wrestling from a physical perspective, but is actually involved with PWA, asked to do like a kind of an additional tryout day. And we kind of made an exception and we said, yeah, okay, you two can come along and do your tryout because you missed it. And then she just aced it. Apparently from that first day I wasn't there, but then I saw her grow in her training and to where she is now. She really is the ultimate student of the game. But Piers, we got to talk about the fact that in Campbelltown, it might not have been streamed, but Robbie Eagles beat Cherry Stevens. So I think that means I'm owed a Soul of PWA title match.
I mean, well, that definitely sounds like it's on the cards for you. And to be honest, that's a match I think we'd all love to see. With you, Break, getting into, you mentioned your career, starting at PWA, started training with Ryan and Madison Eagles. For yourself, like, I know you started out as a backyarder, and I wanted to ask you about your backyard career and your time backyard wrestling. For you, how old were you when you actually started getting into and started doing like backyard shows?
I was about 15 when I started it. I guess, like, you could say 14 was when I started fooling around with mates on whatever we could at school and outside of school. We just kind of fuck around with wrestling stuff. But 15 is when I started taking it more seriously. 15 is when I really started traveling up to Newcastle and I joined HVWA, which was a pretty profoundly well-known backyard organization across the world, to the point of I still meet professionals, some of which are in places like AEW and WWE, that were fans of HVWA, and they've actually said that to me in person, which is very fucking surreal. But it was always just like a means to an end. For me, it was something to fulfill what I wanted to do. And I actually did attempt to sign up for a wrestling school at 15 years old, but I was knocked back because of my age. And I think luckily that all happened because, I did the backyard wrestling thing, and that was kind of like a creative avenue. And for me to kind of get used to, I didn't necessarily perform in front of people, but just getting used to doing the actions and taking some of the bumps, I guess, to a degree, even though I didn't really know what I was doing. But it all kind of made sense, especially looking back at it now. Like, I wouldn't be where I am today if I had started at that other wrestling school when I was 15 years old. So I'm very thankful for the journey that I've been on. And then there's been people like Matt Damon, far out, getting tongue-tied. Matt Diamond, Richie Taylor, Duke Hudson. These are all people that I met doing that. So they're lifelong friends, whether they're wrestling or not anymore. They're still going to be pals that I got to share the ring with in a professional sense and backyard wrestling, which is really cool. And, they're people that are always going to have a special place in this journey because they've kind of seen through the lows to the highs. So, I'm very thankful for my past, but I wouldn't call it a career, Piers, because I definitely put more money into it than I got out of it.
Oh, 100%. But like, do you feel like backyard wrestling, because to me, when I was growing up in the 90s, backyard wrestling was pretty much like deathmatch wrestling, a lot of like more extreme violent stuff. And do you think that backyard wrestling has got a bit of a bad stigma from certain people doing such crazy amounts of stuff, which obviously the more violent stuff gets the more hits and views and stuff like that. But do you feel like that put a bad stigma on backyard wrestling for a lot of years?
100%. It had a terrible stigma, and still kind of does to this day, to be honest. Even with me, I've run into some trainees at PWA that may have had a backyard pass that we found out of before, that knew that we found out on their first day. So we were aware kind of who these people were. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that it doesn't develop any bad habits. And that's kind of something that did happen to me early on into my training, is I would think that I knew how to do something, or I thought I knew the correct movements, but it was all self-taught. So when you're being trained and coached in how to do these things properly by people that have, not only just wrestled in Australia, but people that have wrestled all over the world, so they've learnt from the best along the way, you kind of have to listen, and then you have to break that mold. And that sometimes is a harder thing to do, to break a habit and create a new one, especially if you've just kind of gone on autopilot and just done something. It is very hard to change that from like a body control perspective. So that's ultimately one of the biggest things that I encourage with like people that start their professional wrestling journey with training, is that the thing that's going to be the hardest thing to understand is body control, unless you're like a crazy gymnast or someone that's just been doing all sports, like not just one sport, like hundreds of sports throughout your childhood and your teen years and stuff, because that body control is not something that you just learn, especially if you've never worked out, you've never done a roly-poly before. All these things are things that you do as a kid, and, it's definitely going to help you out. So yeah, that's something that I would look back at in terms of like the stigma as well. It definitely did have that. Like I remember those backyard wrestling tapes that were sold at some of the stores here as well. And it was all just that garbage style of backyard wrestling. But then amongst that, you'd see clips of, M-Dog 20 and Josh Prohibition, who were actually kind of doing what HVWA did. We took it seriously. We just wanted to wrestle, because what we were emulating was very much Ring of Honor. We grew up on that early Ring of Honor as our independent. ECW was kind of before a lot of our time, and we missed the boat on that just because it wasn't readily available here in Australia. So we kind of saw it afterwards. But the thing that we grew up on was Ring of Honor. And then the All Japan kind of heavyweight style that was created by, Kobashi and Akiyama, and that then turned into Noah. And then you had the J Cups we were influenced by when we went back in history. So that's pretty much what we tried to do. And we would change that stigma. So a lot of people that kind of thought they knew what backyard wrestling was would think again. And, we got asked several times that we should put on a professional show, and we were pretty close to doing it. It's just that the one problem was our ring was concreted into the ground, so it literally couldn't be moved anywhere else.
Wow. How did you find, like, once you started going and training like professionally and, training with good, like proper trainers, did you walk in there feeling like, hey, come on, man, I'm the man, I know what I'm doing? Or did it be like, were you humbled going in there? Did you have confidence, or did you go in there with the attitude of going like, okay, I know nothing, I'm learning from scratch?
I went in with that attitude of knowing nothing. I even went to the point of a lot of the backyard wrestling music videos and stuff, because that was our main outlet. We would create highlight reels and music videos of the events and shows that we would put on. Some of them had started, because this was early days of YouTube, they were on there. So I went through, and anything that had me, I got deleted. I tried to make sure that there was nothing that anyone could find of me and my past on YouTube before I started my training. So I kept it under wraps. And it was through a friend in Adelaide doing a show in Melbourne that said, oh yeah, these are his old tights. He sold them to me, and because my initials are the same as what his were in the backyard. Yeah. This is all the stuff he used to do. Here's a clip. And I just got a text from Ryan Eagles that was like, oh, your buddy sold you out. And I was like, shit, I kept this a secret for 8 months. How are they going to react? And luckily everyone was really cool with it, because I came in with that right attitude, because I came in starting from scratch and not kind of saying I knew everything. And I never admitted that at any stage. I just said, what is it that we have to do? Yes, I'll give that a try. And then I wouldn't act like I didn't know what I was doing, but it was either the first or second session I ever did. I remember Madison turning to me and she goes, wait, you really haven't done any training anywhere else? And I was like, no. She's like, are you sure? And I'm like, no, I haven't. And then, that went under the rug for a little bit until 8 months later.
Because it's funny, when I interviewed Ryan Eagles a couple of months back, I asked him, I said, is there anyone that you've trained that just picked everything up instantly? And yours was the first name that he said. He's like, have you met Robbie? And he's like, everything this guy was shown, he just picked up straight away. Did you find, in your training, like, because of obviously doing the backyard stuff, but learning to do things properly, was there like light bulb moments going on for you? Like as you're learning to do like a proper back bump, for example, are you like, oh, it's not killing me as much as doing it this way as the way I was doing it?
Yeah, definitely were light bulb moments. I can't really remember any in particular of like prime examples of going, oh, this is how it's done. I mean, running the ropes, all that sort of stuff. A lot of that was just whatever I was doing before was not to a professional standard. So it was getting me by, but it wasn't in an actual pro ring. So therefore I didn't really ever know what I was doing. I do remember that I would have hurdles. There would be points where I thought I'm acing everything. And then I would get to a point in classes and then I just couldn't get something. And I'd just be like, fuck, what do I have to do? Like they're telling me do this, do that. And I'm doing everything that I'm being instructed, but I'm still being told I'm not doing it right. Or, I just can't perfect the technique. And I'm still at the lower end of the totem pole when the class comes to who's achieving it and who's not. And that was really frustrating, but those plateaus come to anyone in training. That's kind of the hardship of being someone that does pick things up quickly, because you will hit an eventual plateau and then you just got to find a way to overcome it. I see it happen all the time. I've seen it in people like Grayson Waller, formerly known as Matty Warburg. I've seen it in people like Ricky South. I've seen it in pretty much anyone that's on the PWA roster. It does hit people at different peaks. Some people, maybe they don't pick things up as quickly from the get-go, so it comes earlier and then you don't notice the plateau as obviously. But then those people that are like naturally gifted and kind of just get the knack for everything right away, it really sticks out when they get stuck on something, because you see it keeps repeating for them. They can't get past this one technique or this one movement in training. And yeah, so I've been there and I can relate to people on that level. So that's definitely something that was a bit of a hindrance with the backyard pass, because it would be that autopilot of, I think I know what I'm doing. And I just kind of tap back into that muscle memory, and it was the wrong muscle memory to have. So I had to break that habit.
So how long into like you started training with the Eagles did you then start getting onto shows?
So believe it or not, it was 2 months after I had my first training session that I was booked for my first match. Pretty quick progression. And looking back at it now, I definitely was not anywhere near ready. I did not understand the full concepts of what I needed to know to have a full match. But luckily for the time of where we were in professional wrestling in Australia, I could get away with it in the sense of I wasn't that bad, but inside I knew I wasn't performing to the same level of everyone else on the card. So it was, disheartening for me to be like, oh, cool, I'm having my first match 2 months in. That's awesome. They must think really highly of me. And then I would go out there and then come back from the match and go, well, shit, maybe I shouldn't be wrestling yet because I don't feel like I have the knack for this, or I don't have the right headspace to retain the knowledge that I've been learning at training. So I would have if I look back at it now, I probably would have held myself back another 6 to 8 months, to be honest, just so I felt more confident with it. But it definitely got me out there in front of the audience. I got rid of the nerves very easily and quickly because I had to just, you just had to. And I got to work with a lot of people that gave me the right advice that I needed to hear to keep pushing forward. So I'm very fortunate for that. But then, there was other people that had been training longer than me that still waited a whole year after my first session to have their first match. And it's just crazy how people just learn in different levels and streams like that. So yeah, 2 months after I started training, would I recommend watching it back? Absolutely not. Have I ever seen footage of it? Absolutely not. Do I ever want to see footage of it? Absolutely not.
Is there footage of it?
Let's hope it's been burnt or got overwritten on tape by someone else recording something else.
It's fair enough, but it's interesting because like I feel like everyone can be their own worst critic, but to actually take a step back and go, you know what, I'm not ready for this. I need to work on. You know what I mean? Like knowing that and having that mindset. Like it's probably a mature mindset for a young person to have, because it's very easy to go in there and just go, oh, I shit the bed, I suck, I suck, I suck. But to sit there and be like calculated about it and go, you know what, maybe I'm not ready. This I need to work on. I need to understand what I'm going through. And that, like, you can kind of applaud someone for going through and having that mindset after that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely made self-assessments, and luckily for me, and one of the things that PWA kind of, picked up a bonus on was I had about 2 to 3 digital cameras that I would bring along to things like training and to shows. So I started getting extra angles for PWA, but also for me, it meant that I'd come back home with at least one of the tapes so I could review footage. And that's been something that's been a strength for me in my career as a whole, is reviewing my own performances. And it's not from a sense of, I want to watch my match back and go, yeah, I did fucking awesome. Look how sick I looked at that. I've never had that mindset. I'm literally watching it. And I'm like, I might be like, that was cool. That was good. And then the next thing that happens is I'm like, damn, that's what needs work. And I'd slow-mo it down and rewind it and play it again and try and work out, was it my footwork? Was it my positioning? Was it my timing? Did I not lift at the right time? Like it was all these sort of things that I'd be doing. And then that's what I would bring into training the next week or the next day, is I'd be drilling that. And I'd be like, hey, I slipped up on this, or I mistimed this. I need to work on that. And I still do that to this day. And luckily for me, that's something I get to do for all the PWA roster and other people as well. They'll send me matches for reviews, and I'll review it, go through the feedback with them. And if it's someone I get the chance to train with on a one-on-one or in a group perspective at the Pro Wrestling Academy, I go, well, here's the thing that was an overall arching issue for everyone on the show. Let's all work on that going forward, which is, I think, the best way to train, rather than just, coaches picking a new technique and going, we're going to learn this today. It might have zero real-time benefit based on the last performance or the talent had. So we very much, just like a football team, right? They'd watch their match from the last weekend and go, here's the errors we had. Here's the drills we're going to do to try and overcome those errors and put us in those same situations and see if we shit the bed on them again. And that's the way that I like to coach.
100%. I think that it's a good way to go about it, going back, review, because like footage doesn't lie. It is what it is. It's unforgiving at the best of times. You mentioned, when you did start, like, Australian wrestling wasn't where it is today. What was Australian wrestling like when you actually started breaking in?
It was such a different landscape. Most of the events that you do were taking place in community halls, in sometimes RSLs, and even if they were in RSLs, they usually didn't have the nicest auditorium. Excuse me. It was kind of bleak, I guess. Like the crowds, people that would turn up were into it, and often you'd find they followed the local promotion, so you'd see the same people coming back. But your high numbers were 1 to 200, and there were definitely promotions that were drawing more than that, but not regularly. So anyone that wants to come here and fight me on it, they can. But tell me a promotion that was regularly kind of in the same area, not doing regional things, not doing one-off kind of spot shows, that were drawing high numbers. And there weren't heaps of them. There were definitely some. There just weren't heaps of them. It wasn't regularly enough. There was lots of shows happening at, training facilities in industrial blocks and stuff like that as well. And that's pretty much my bread and butter, what I grew up on, how I came up in the wrestling business. But it was good because I saw the rise. I saw Liverpool Masonic Centre was a very special place because so much happened there for PWA. We really grew from, 2007, I sat as an audience member at a Liverpool Masonic Centre show in, I think it was November of 2007, and went straight to a high school house party straight after, and was like, oh my God, this shit was incredible. I remember watching Luke Watts versus Ryan Eagles, and it blew my mind. And I was just telling everyone about it. And then I come into my first year and I did shows at the Masonic Centre, and there's maybe, anywhere between 50 to 100 people there. Yeah. And then by 2011, we had been in our, I think, third year of basically having a tendency there where the first Friday of every month we were running a show, regardless of what was happening on that weekend. Yeah. And we were packing 300 to 350 people into this small community hall. And like January to March was the worst because there was no AC. It was hot as fuck. And it was just standing room, people shoulder to shoulder, absolutely no room to move in that place. But some of the best shows I've ever been a part of were in that hall. And I saw wrestlers grow. I saw my friends, my peers just have these tremendous performances. And I saw the fans coming back every month, and they just knew I come to this one spot first Friday of every month and there's going to be a banger of a show. And we definitely took dips, like the crowd attendance would die down in certain parts as well. And, you know, by the end of it, I remember our last ever show there, we were kind of just against our will. We had to leave that venue. The last ever show brought the numbers back up, and I got to main event that. So it was really cool, and it was really a really special place. I totally forgot the main question that you asked me, but I kind of just went on a rant about the Liverpool Masonic Centre because it's somewhere that saw the rise of Robbie Eagles.
Oh, good. It was based on how different Australian wrestling was when you broke in compared to
right. So like compared to now, like just think about it. Like PWA is at the Factory Theatre, at Liberty Hall, at the Roundhouse, which to me boggles my mind because from about 15 years old, when I started doing the backyard wrestling thing, I started going to live gigs as well, and I was seeing some of my favorite bands play at the Roundhouse, play at. Back then, it was before it was Max Watts, which is now Liberty Hall. It was the Forum, and then it became the Hi-Fi after that, and then it became Max Watts, and now Liberty Hall. I remember seeing Parkway Drive play at the Forum, and it was one of the best fucking nights of my life. So for me, the first time we got to perform there for PWA, even though it was Max Watts, it was a different name. The venue had changed slightly as well. It was still so surreal and cool to be there and be like, I'm backstage where Parkway Drive would have been before they went out for that set. So like 15-year-old Robbie was like smiling ear to ear, being like, I fucking made it. Like, this is cool as shit.
That's awesome, man. It's interesting, like how far I think Australian wrestling's come, and like I've mentioned this a couple of times. I brought a friend of mine to a PWA show, not a wrestling fan, not a hater, but just someone who just doesn't watch it. And you know, I said to him, "Hey, come to this show." Blah blah blah. He's like, "Okay, cool." Show at the Factory Theatre. He's walking in, and the whole time he's like, "What the fuck is this?" I go, "You all right?" And he's like, "Bro, I thought you were going to take me to an RSL club." And he's like, "What's going on? Like, this is the Factory Theatre." I'm like, "Yeah, man, I know." Sit down. The first match, you versus Jess Troy. You come out, Jess Troy comes out. He's just looking at me going, "Bro, is this dude going to fight this chick? Is this what we're going to see here?" And I'm like, just watch. In 5 minutes, you will not even know it's two different genders wrestling each other. And by the halfway through the match, he was like standing on his chair, like just popping huge. And like throughout the whole show, he was the same way. When we left, he was just like, "This is just the most ridiculous thing I've ever. This is fantastic. I've got to come back to this. I've got to see more of this." It was just like from walking in, just complete confused and bewilderment to being like, "Holy shit, this is massive."
Yeah, dude. And honestly, the thing that I've been saying since I started, like I said, 15-year-old Robbie went to these venues to see international acts to local acts playing, you know, full-fledged concerts. I said since I basically started being, I guess, an advisory person in PWA pretty early on into my career of wrestling as well, because I always wanted to see this company grow. I always said we need to be in the entertainment hubs, like going to the RSLs and whatever else. Like sometimes you luck out and the RSL has like an amazing auditorium, the lights, the sounds, everything's kicking. But at the end of the day, it's still a local RSL. It's still not the place where people are going to flock to just on a whim on a Friday or Saturday night going, who's playing tonight kind of thing. Like what comedian is doing stand-up here tonight? What international act is playing a concert here tonight? So I always said from the get-go, especially with PWA, is we were giving stadium-size performances in small community halls. So all we needed to do was just kind of move into those, I guess, arenas or stadiums. Yeah. We're not quite at stadiums yet, but like the arenas that we're at now, the Factory Theatres, the Max Watts, the Star, and most recently the Roundhouse. These are the places that we need to be in. Because as soon as you're there, people go, you're fucking legit. And, you know, the worst thing that could happen is, you know, 50 people turn up and it's a huge building. You never want that. But luckily, we haven't ever had that because we've promoted it the right way. We've marketed it the right way. And just our, I guess, genuine fan base, and like naturally it's just grown. So people have told their friends, similar to your story, people that come for the first time are impressed because they had an expectation of what it was going to be. And we succeed that from them entering the doors. Whereas we wouldn't have that same vibe and feel if we were at the RSL, if we were at the community halls. So that's why we have to keep pushing that. And like my dream, one of my dreams, I got a list of dream venues that I want to see PWA at. You know, the Big Top at Luna Park, that's a big one. I've been to some great concerts there. But I think the penultimate place that we need to get to is the Horden Pavilion, because that's where wrestling in Sydney, that was the heart of wrestling in Sydney back when, you know, Ron Miller was still around and he was wrestling and defending championships. So I want to get pro wrestling back to the Horden Pavilion. And that's a personal goal. And I know that's a shared goal with the family of PWA.
Like besides the Horden Pavilion, what would be the next step like for venues for PWA to go into? Would it be like a stadium? Would it be that sort of big level? And how far do you think Australian wrestling and PWA are off from that?
I don't think we're far off, to be honest. The Roundhouse was really kind of like a test for us to see how we went on that big pressure, big stage kind of environment. And I think we killed it. Everyone from top to bottom, like I said, staff, production, our refs, our rookies, our wrestlers, everyone that was involved in any sort of capacity. Even, you know, Sam at the merch desk and all the people that were helping her, she crushed it. She did such a good job. And I just want to shout her out because she's someone that goes so overlooked in terms of how hard she works for all of us as the talent who just kind of drop off a shirt. And then a lot of us, not me personally, but a lot of people kind of go, that's it. I won't worry about it now. Sam will do the rest for me. She has grown so confident in that role, Piers. She absolutely kills it. She knows who's sold what. She like pushes the merch. She knows what's the new t-shirts. She's really, really fantastic and such like a invaluable person for PWA. If we lost Sam, I think we'd be in a hard place. Just like if we lost Video Boy Jax and Ben Anderson and Aiden behind the production and, you know, anyone really. The people that we have now are the core people we need for PWA. But I think maybe the next step is somewhere like the Big Top. That's somewhere I'd like to go to because I think it is an entertainment hub. I recently went to a gig at Manning Bar in Sydney, which I, you know, forgot until I was there how fucking sick Manning Bar is. There's a lot of kind of logistical issues with running a wrestling show in there because the dance floor is quite tight. I think there's a lot of stairs to get a ring up. So it might not work out from a logistical standpoint, but that would be a cool place to go to. But I'm really always open to suggestions. Like, I guess I haven't been seeing live music and live entertainment as much as I've been now touring and kind of leaving the country too, more regularly. So I kind of forget these venues that are the happening venues or the places where the mainstream gigs or the main ticketing gigs are taking place. So that's what I think the next step is. And then say in maybe 5 years, maybe less, maybe that's when we try and run our first stadium.
That'd be pretty cool to see. And I think, you know, the way that PWA has grown over the years, and I think it's got a great business model. It has great people, I think, as you just said, working behind the scenes. Production, I think, is probably the biggest thing in professional wrestling, because I think you could have the greatest wrestling show on earth, but if the production's shit, the audio shit, it's scratchy, stuff like that, you're not going to be able to get the viewers. And I feel like backed with the performances of the wrestlers who go in and put the shows on, people behind the scenes at PWA do an absolute amazing job, which is undeniable. You know, and I think it's probably up there, you know, and I've said PWA's production is probably up there with like an NXT. You compare it to like, you know, I watch a lot of indie wrestling, and I think PWA is like above and beyond a lot of the top indies in the States, to be honest with you.
Going back to like an earlier question that you asked, like what the main difference was with wrestling kind of back when I started to what it is now, that's a very valid thing that you bring up, because I felt like the actual wrestling always evolved and grew. So people got better in the ring, the matches got better. But the problem was we didn't have the staging and the lighting and the audio and the video screens. Like for years, I never wrestled with an actual entrance video just because we'd never have venues that had them, or it cost an arm and a leg to get one. So it wasn't something financially viable for the company. Whereas now, you know, even sometimes these things still aren't financially viable for the company, I bet. But
100%.
we do it because it sets the scene for, you know, yourself as someone that's viewing it, or any person that comes in to the Roundhouse that bought a ticket. I actually met a couple of people that were kind of distant friends of a friend of a friend of someone that was performing on the show. And it was their first show. And at intermission, they were talking about how fucking good it was. And they were like, we're in, we can't wait to come to the next one already. And that is the best thing that you could hear. But without the production team making sure that all those other elements hit, when the matches go, you know, bell rings for it to start and the bell rings for it to end, if it's not set in the right light, if it's not set in the right staging, if it doesn't look right, then the atmosphere is gone as soon as those two bells ring at the start and at the end. Like, it's just, oh, this is kind of crummy. Okay, now I've been taken by the action. Yay, I'm into it. Okay, now I'm still in like a weird hall that's brightly lit up and doesn't have that atmosphere. But that's the thing that we made the change on. I think it kind of came when we started doing Max Watts on a regular basis. We went, if we're in a building like this, if we're in a venue like Max Watts, we need to match what the other entertainment performers are doing when they're here at Max Watts. So we need to make sure the lighting's right. We need to make sure the audio's right. We need to make sure that it all creates the atmosphere. And that's something that, you know, for ages I always had in the back of my mind, but maybe I didn't know how to achieve it because we didn't have the right people surrounding us in PWA. And luckily through, I don't want to blow smoke up my own ass, but through a lot of the networking that I've done to help PWA, a lot of these people are now involved. Even from, you know, can't forget the commentary team of Chris Gale and Rose. They are undeniably one of the best parts of the PWA show. And I love listening to them back, even on the events that I'm not here for. That's one of the things that puts a big smile on my face, is just listening to them call the matches, because I still remember meeting them for the first time in the Triple M studios when they were still there. And, you know, it's just kind of blossomed into something that's incredible and amazing.
And you know what, like Rose and Gale, fantastic at what they do. You know, they've been able to help me, give me advice as I've sort of started to come into that commentary sort of position as well. And every time I get a chance, I say, hey, what did you think? Blah, blah, blah. What can I do to work on? What can I get better? Because it's like, I see these guys that do it and they just come off so flawlessly. And it's like, that to me is like, they're so good. And it's not knowing every single name of every single move that's happening in front of you, but it's like the way that they can add almost like a little bit of the lyrics to a song. You know what I mean? Like sort of explaining what's going on. And I think that they do that really, really well.
Yeah, they're second to none. One of the best commentary teams that I've ever worked with. I would love to one day get the opportunity. I don't know if I'm just starting to put stuff into the universe and maybe it'll happen. But if there was a 3-man booth and it was Chris Gale, Rose, and Kevin Kelly, ultimate dream for a PWA show.
Oh, dude. Kevin Kelly, he's fantastic, you know, without a doubt. You know, for yourself, you know, you did get signed a couple of years back to New Japan Pro Wrestling. You know, your match, I want to get into New Japan, but I want to get into the match that you had with Will Ospreay at PWA Black Label. You know, a lot of people tell me that this was the match that really sort of put PWA on the map. What are your thoughts about the match, and you know, what was it like leading up to it? Had you had a match? Had you had any interaction? With Will before this match?
There was a little interaction with Will and I online. About a year prior, there was a clip of me hitting the standing Spanish fly from a match in Newcastle Pro. I think it was part of like a tag team tournament, which was, funnily enough, against Unsocial Jordan and Instagram, who a lot of people would know now as Kyle Fletcher from Aussie Open. I don't think that's a secret anymore. So it was myself and Matt Diamond against those two. This clip went a little viral. And I actually said to Newcastle Pro, because 2016, we still weren't quite hitting the internet in the right way from Australian wrestling standards. I don't think anyway. And I kind of said we should start putting up just like little highlights or little 5-second clips or 10-second clips of things that like got really good reactions from the shows. And that was one of them. And that video blew up. And I remember seeing on, I think it was Facebook, like you could see who shared it.
Yeah.
And then I saw this William fellow shared it. And then I was reading the kind of thread of comments. And it basically was people telling Will that I was this person from Backyard Wrestling that he used to watch because Will used to be a backyard wrestler. And he kind of watched our backyard wrestling, and that was his inspiration for it at the time. So it's like a really meta kind of like, I guess, meeting or understanding of who each other was in 2016, because he was really starting to be a guy at that point. He was about a year into his New Japan run.
Yeah.
So then it kind of came that opportunity that he was coming to Australia and New Zealand, and it was offered to PWA to have him for a match. And I pretty much just went, look, I'm very unselfish here. I'm always about making sure that everyone gets the first opportunity, the best opportunity, whatever it is. But I need to have this match. And it really was the catalyst. I don't think for just PWA, but that whole weekend where he came to PWA, wrestled me on the Friday night, and then Saturday night he wrestled Adam Brooks for MCW. Those two matches were the catalyst for Australian wrestling to really grow into what it is right now across the board. You can't deny it, because Will was such a spokesperson for the scene that we had, because I was there. He would watch the show from the start, and then he would go out there and have the matches that he would have with myself and with Adam. And then afterwards, he would just make sure that he'd go out of his way to talk on the microphone. And you knew that promo was going to get out to the masses of Will, not only winning championships, but also talking and explaining how passionate he was. And those were his first 2 days in Australia. So he didn't owe us shit. Like, he didn't have to do that. But he trained with us at the Pro Wrestling Academy the night before on the Thursday and was super impressed with everyone. And then on the Friday, we just had a banger of a show. So he was like, this is fucking great. And those words that he said, he meant, and he really put eyes on us. There was people that would come in before that with international tours and stuff that did help us, but I don't think to the same level of what Will was doing back then. He was really screaming, hey, everyone, look at what Australia's doing, because you're going to fucking miss out. And that kind of changed everything and put more eyes on, not only us, not only MCW, but places like Wrestle Rampage, like EPW in Perth, RCW in Adelaide as well. Across the board, you got to understand. And if you look at the audience too, you can see that it's not just people with Batista shirts or Mick Foley shirts or Stone Cold Steve Austin shirts. You're starting to see someone that might come to an indie wrestling show in Australia for the first time with, like, I don't know, an LIJ shirt, or they might be wearing, a Jay White t-shirt. And that means that there was already those fans out there. We all knew that, but they weren't invested or willing to come to the local scene. And it wasn't until someone of Ospreay's caliber, especially at that time, just started saying, hey, you got to come now. You got to be a part of it, or you're going to miss out, and you're going to feel like you're jumping on the bandwagon late. And luckily, we've reaped the rewards of those 2 nights.
But I think as well, like a lot of people, and I speak to a lot of people in the Australian wrestling scene, and a lot of people that I interview tell me, when I say to them, how did you get into blah, 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 I had no idea Australian wrestling existed. And like, I've done over 250 interviews, and I've lost count how many times that's what people have told me. And it's like, I think that even someone like a Will Ospreay coming over here and being on a show, I think people would see that, obviously follow his New Japan run or whatever it may be, and go, oh, there's wrestling in Australia. And I think that is also one of the things that really sort of get people through the door in a lot of ways, is finding out about it. And I said, as soon as like lockdown was over, I said to a lot of people, I think shows now are going to be sold out a lot quicker. You're going to have more people at shows, because all the hardcore wrestling fans was like, man, always said, I'm going to go to a wrestling show. Now it's like, fuck, I better go to a show, because I don't know if we're going to be in lockdown again. So I'm going to go enjoy my freedom and go to a show.
Yeah, I agree. And that night in Paddington, it was one of our first ever PWA Black Label events too. We didn't know how that was going to go. First time doing an over 18 show. We had only our last show before that was at an RSL. So, and it shows where we still were at that point in time. But, so many people in that audience, I had never seen before. And I'm really good with remembering faces and names, especially anyone that comes up to the merch desk or says hello at any point to me during the night. And I was just like, who are these people and where the fuck did they come from? And luckily, I feel like maybe not on a regular monthly basis, but I still see some of those people that will then turn up to the Roundhouse, or they're at the Metro Theatre, for example. That's another venue I forgot to mention, which is a big deal for me. But seeing people that came to those shows specifically who maybe hadn't come back and since like that Paddington show originally, I'm like, hey, welcome back. Where the fuck have you been? Like, why weren't you here for the whole ride? But good on you for coming back. You know, we have retained those fans. And if you look back at that show, that first show that Will came to, Caveman Og versus Jonah in the opener, fuck, you set the stage. There's no way those two boys weren't going to kill it, and they absolutely did.
And that's the thing, I think, as well. Like, structuring a card well for the audience is such a difficult thing to do. It's like, because you could have these best matches, but knowing where to put each match on the card, like, you know, taking, for example, and we're going back to the Roundhouse show, the opening match, the tag team match, I think that between the Velocities and MK Plus Ultra, I think that match that started that show really sort of like, okay, bang, start off with a bang, excitement. And that was what really, I think, you know, starting the show off an excitement level, just keeping that excitement all the way through. And I think that's, as you said, the Jonah versus UG match, having two big heavyweights starting off, you know, collisions meeting, that's another fantastic way to start a show off, because it's like, okay, what's next?
Especially because we had Will and myself main eventing, which was a polar opposite of what UG and Jonah did at the start. I think 100%. That was a very good example of what you're talking about. But I did say to both tag teams from the opener separately last Friday that, you know, disappointing for MK Plus Ultra to lose the belts. And obviously the Velocities were in very high spirits. But I said to them both, you know, thank you for doing that match, because you guys set the tone for the rest of the night, and you guys really started the atmosphere for everyone in the perfect way possible. You know, I'm sure they all wanted to keep fighting for much longer, but the pinfall happened when the pinfall happened, and it was, you know, pretty quickly after the first bell rung, as some people might have taken notice of. But you know, it was great that way, because it kept things running. It made the show kick off with a bang. And you're absolutely correct. I think there was no one better fitted to open the show but those two tag teams. I'm very proud of both of them.
Yeah, they were fantastic, you know. But look, I wanted to get into New Japan Pro Wrestling. You know, yourself being signed there, former junior heavyweight champ, former junior tag team champion as well. You know, when did New Japan first start taking notice of you, and like, when did the conversation start to happen with New Japan?
I kind of just wedged my foot in the door as soon as it opened, a little bit figuratively. And that all started after I had that first match with Ospreay. He said to me afterwards that he would do whatever he could to help me out, which I'm very thankful for. And I'm still super appreciative for him basically getting me to where I am now. And then after that, we had Okada come for an MCW event where he wrestled Slex. And Okada was also there. So was Bad Luck Fale. There was a seminar that was ran, or a tryout, I think it was actually. No, sorry, I'm getting confused. The tryout was on the event where I wrestled Ospreay and Brooks in the three-way, which was like a week after the first Will Ospreay Robbie Eagles match. So there was a tryout there. Ghetto and Jado were in attendance, as well as Fale, as just people to oversee the tryout and take a look at people. And then that kind of kept rolling, right? We had Okada come. There was another seminar for that. Naito came. There was another seminar for that. And I just made sure I was at all of them. I even went to the point where I flew to the Fale dojo and did a seminar in New Zealand. I was in the country less than 24 hours just to take part in that seminar. And those kind of things is what kind of, I guess, kept my foot wedged ajar in that little opening that the door had. And I, started talking to New Japan properly around mid 2018. There was a whole bunch of different ideas that were thrown, and then we got stuck. Well, not stuck, sorry. We got thrown the idea of, the Sniper of the Skies joining the Bullet Club. And I thought it was fitting. It was the perfect fit. And I got told that I was going to do junior tag league and be Ishimori's tag team partner. And it was all just kind of went from there. And then it was early 2019 where I got told that they wanted to sign me to a full-time deal. And it was good because the day before I'd quit my full-time job. So for 24 hours, I was stressing like an absolute head case about what I was going to do. I had signed up to be an Uber Eats driver just in case, wrestling didn't make ends meet. And the call came within 24 hours of all that happening. So I'm very fortunate for how things happen with New Japan Pro Wrestling.
That's insane. Like, I can just imagine the person calling you from Uber Eats the next day after you've gotten the phone call from New Japan going, hey, we just want to talk to you about your application. No, thanks. Wrong number.
Well, I actually did do a couple of deliveries just because there was some time between my contract starting and, being, unemployed, I guess, for a couple of weeks. So I gave it a go. I gave it a red hot go. And I remember the first, I did one of my deliveries. I think I was picking up my wife from a friend's house. She was at like a party and I was like, I'll turn my Uber Eats on. And I did a delivery and it was like for some really drunk people from Macca's. And they were asking if they could give me $20 to go back and get them something else. And I was just like, nah, I'm fucking done with this. I don't want to be an Uber Eats driver.
Hey man, shout out to the Uber Eats drivers, man, making sure everyone stays fed. But you mentioned Bullet Club as well. Like, was there ever any long-term plans for you in Bullet Club, or is what sort of unfolded the way that it sort of unfolded? Like, is that?
Yeah, I think it was all natural. It felt like the right fit at first, and then it just wasn't. Especially when El Fantasma came into the group, that's when, there was a pretty easy divide in terms of where I fit in the structure of Bullet Club. And that's where I started seeing myself just go to the wayside. And I was like, oh, I don't fit in here anymore. And it wasn't necessarily the style of wrestling that I wanted to do. So I think, where I've ended up in Chaos is where I was always destined to go.
Sure.
And then, the idea of myself and Will Ospreay as a tag team was always something that early on was thought of. But then as things rolled in and I joined the Bullet Club and I started tagging with Ishimori, that kind of got forgotten about. So then when there was an opportunity to bring that idea back, we were like, yes, let's run with it. And I think people realized pretty quickly how crazy our chemistry was as opponents and even more so as tag team partners, because the Birds of Prey was one of the most fun things that I got to live out. And I still look back at that very fondly. I run there. I'm disappointed we didn't get to do anything in Australia because there was talks of Birds of Prey versus Velocities at one point, and that would have been very, very fun. I don't think Paris or Jude would want to fight Ospreay now because he's put on so much fucking size, but even back then, his chops hurt like a motherfucker, so I wouldn't want the boys to go through shit like that anyway. So it's probably like a blessing in disguise to a degree, but it's definitely a match that was dream match potential. And yeah, it's disappointing it didn't happen, but we all take the path that we take because the natural routes of where we're going is generally where we're always supposed to head to. And I feel like if my path in New Japan didn't go the way that it had through the Bullet Club through to Chaos, I would have never become the IWGP Junior Champion. I never would have become the Double Crown Champion holding the tag belts at the same time too. So I never look back at that and go, I should have changed this or this should have happened instead. I look back and I go, nah, it all went as it should have. And I ran with it, took the punches as they came on, or, took the bumpy road as it came in front of me. But yeah, I'm forever grateful for where I am today.
Do you think, looking at where, and I've said this a couple of times before, like, I feel like Australian wrestling, for people of like my age group growing up, we didn't really have Australians in WWE or WCW or anything like that. I think Nathan Jones was probably the first Australian I can honestly remember being in wrestling from my age group. But now, like, you see, WWE, NXT, New Japan, for example, Impact, AEW starting to showcase Australian talents. In the time that you've got into wrestling compared to where it is now, we're seeing a lot of people in the mainstream wrestling world from Australia getting signed, and that reality being more of in arm's reach for people here in Australia. Have you seen like a massive influx of people that have coming to start training because they're seeing more and more Australians on mainstream wrestling?
There's definitely a lot more people coming to things like the tryouts for the Pro Wrestling Academy. I remember with training early on in my career, you'd get people signing up here or there. Maybe a duo would come in and sign up. It'd be friends or brothers or whatever it may be. But it would be so sporadic. Like some months you'd get a couple people start up that were new, and then you just have months on end when no one would start up because, we were pretty open arms with the training academy. And even now with PWA, with the Pro Wrestling Academy, we hold these. I think they're about every 3 or 4 months. We hold the tryouts, and there was a period where we first started, we were getting big numbers, and then they drop off, and we'd get maybe 4 people turn up, or maybe 5 people turn up. But now we're getting anywhere between 15 to 20 people turn up, and that's every 3 or 4 months. So within a year, we're getting 60 to 80 people come to try out to learn the craft. And for me, as a professional wrestler in Sydney, as a coach for professional wrestling in Sydney, that's amazing to get up to 80 to 100 people through the doors in a year that want to start the journey. So I definitely think it's been because of the influx of Australian and New Zealand talent that have been on, especially WWE, because that's still the number one wrestling organization that's viewed here in Australia. Obviously, places like AEW is coming on the up, but until it's on something like Foxtel or mainstream TV here, it's still going to be second to WWE. And I totally understand that. But that's why I'm, still so proud to have friends like Cassie Lee and Jessie McKay and to have seen what they've done. And they waved that flag so viciously for Australia by being so bogan on TV that it was 100%. Undeniable that they were Australian, to the point where my father-in-law, who's a pretty rabid WWE watcher, was so annoyed by them because he felt like they were giving Australians a bad name by how bogan they were being on TV. Which was so funny because obviously I have a very personal relationship with them. So it was funny hearing that feedback. But no, I think definitely people like the Inspiration, as they were latest known, Tennille, Buddy, Jonah, Tony, all the people that are doing great things. And that's what I try to do with my position in New Japan as well, is it's all about growing the scene here in Australia so that it can be a self-sustaining industry, because I don't think it's the best thing that for people to be a full-time professional wrestler from Australia that they have to move. It's not fair that that's the case. Whereas, in almost any other industry, you can be that full-time profession, but still live in Australia and do it in Australia and make that full-time living. Whereas why, if you want to be a professional wrestler, do you have to get signed somewhere overseas? And fortunately for me, New Japan Pro Wrestling, I get to still stay and live in Australia, and I just go back and forth. But for almost all these other companies, for any opportunities like that, you have to be living in America, in the UK, in Mexico, in Japan, wherever it may be, in order to get that full-time living. So, I'm going to continue to grow in New Japan Pro Wrestling. There's still more that I have to achieve there. And personally, if I am being selfish, I am looking out for myself as number one. But the number two goal for me personally, and that's always going to be something I embody, is about how can I do whatever I do overseas, but bring some eyes back to Australia to help grow what's happening here so that it can become an industry where people can get signed to an Australian wrestling company and that's their full-time living. Because once that happens, Piers, we're going to see people just absolutely explode in terms of if you think Jessica Troy is good now, just wait until she's doing wrestling full-time. She doesn't have to have a side hustle to be able to live the way that she lives. She can literally just rely on professional wrestling because someone like Jessica Troy is that damn good. She should be making a living from it. But because of the way that our industry is here in this country, that's just not what's happening. So yeah, I just can't wait for the day that does happen, because then you're just going to see the people that we think are talented and good now just go fucking boom and become even better because they can dedicate themselves even more than they already are.
But, I think you can make a full-time living at something, but I think, do you think that Australian wrestling will get to a point of a WWE and AEW where it's multi-billion-dollar, corporations where people are making, massive amounts of money, because you could go and make a full-time living in the US on the indies and probably earn, say, I'm going to throw a random figure out here, 80 grand a year. But then you go and get signed to WWE and then you're earning 300 grand a year. You know what I mean? For example, like, do you see Australian wrestling being to the point of like a AEW, WWE, or a New Japan size where they can go in and offer significant life-changing contracts?
I don't see why not. Just look at things like the NRL, look at the netball here in Australia, look at cricket, right? All of those things you could relate to what the NBA and the NBL is for America, right? But within
100%.
Australia, the NRL players are making those contracts and that kind of money. They have the advertisers, they have the sponsors, they have all of that. We're just as fucking good. Professional wrestling in this country is just as good. It could sell out stadiums, but people, I say people, but I guess like all of us collectively, we either need to just come together and make it happen, or we need the right person, the right business, the right, I don't know what it is, but there's something there that's there's the gap of where we are to where we need to go, and we just need to make that link, right? And there have been people in the past that have had a crack. You've had your WWA from back in the day. I think that was Andrew McManus, if I'm getting the name correctly. Someone like that, but with what we're doing now. And, even from companies like MCW, EPW, PWA, Wrestle Rampage, all the places I always mention, and the places I work regularly as well when I'm in the country, we can literally go, here's what we do on our own. And then people will go, holy fuck, you guys do that on your own? Like, do you have this person or this kind of marketing? And we go, no, we do it ourselves. Everyone wears multiple hats and we just pitch in where we can, and we're all about growing this industry and this company. And then people go, holy shit, if you guys are already doing that, what happens if we bring in all this money and fancy marketers and advertisers and sponsors? It's just going to go gangbusters, right?
Yeah.
So we just need someone to be willing to take a chance on it, because we're not just going to go, give us your money and then fucking, bludge and fuck off. We're gonna work even harder than we already do, and people are working so hard for like a hot dog and a handshake still in this country, and I don't think that's fair. So I'm just waiting for the day. Like, I'd love to say that PWA just grows into its own thing and doesn't need anyone to come in, but I don't think that's the case, right? Like, there might need to be some added beneficiary that comes in to make it grow, I guess, faster is the best way to put it, because we could get there on our own, but it just might take longer. Whereas I feel like everyone deserves it now. And I was like, how can we get to that point? If I win the 160 million on Thursday, where most of it's going. So that'll be a good day. I mean, most of it's going to go in my pocket, I'll be honest, but I'll put some of it towards Australian wrestling.
100%. I think, Australian wrestling, if it can get the right backing and the right supporter, it can absolutely go gangbusters. Do you think like companies now, and I think a lot of major companies, I think even a lot of indie companies now, instead of focusing on having, a name talent or building up a star, it's building up more of like a roster and building up the company value? Is the days of, having a top draw in wrestling of a particular performer gone? Because I feel like a lot of now companies are more of like WWE, for example. Asuka might be out for 6 months, but you're not going to really notice that she's gone because we're going to have this in replacement of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I don't think it is gone, because you still have, when you have your WWEs and your AEWs and your big mainstream companies that are on television and cable and whatnot, they have to have that, because there has to be that main. I'm just seeing what Rose wrote there. Yeah. That main person, right? Like, it was John Cena for ages. It was, Roman Reigns now. Like, I get it. It's still going to happen. It's still going to be a thing. But I think for Australian wrestling, if we're going to grow to that sort of level, I don't think it'll ever be like that, because, Piers, do you watch the NRL? Do you follow the footy?
Not as much as I used to, but yeah, kind of still do.
Kind of, right? So with the radio and TV, you're going to get glimpses of it. Who's the main draw in the NRL?
Depends which team you're really looking at. Really.
See, that's the thing. So then even just going at that, you're saying it's teams. So there's multiple, there's someone from each team. So even then, that's going to be split across 16 teams.
Mm-hmm.
So that's already a collective. That's what we're going to do with Australian wrestling. It's not about this one person. It's about the brand. The brand is what you want to go see. Just much like with like any band, you don't just go for the lead singer. You go for the whole band. So I think that's how we should be looking at it. It's not about the one top draw. It's about the brand drawing over everyone else. Because let's look at it like this. In realistic point, if I could, I would never miss a PWA event. But because of my contract in New Japan Pro Wrestling, that takes top priority. So if I have to be away for 7 months straight, like I was last year, I mean, thank you, Australia, for fucking locking me out. But I was away for 7 months straight. I couldn't participate in PWA. Didn't mean that PWA stopped drawing. Didn't mean that PWA drew any less without me there. Arguably, sometimes they might have drawn more because the Velocities were wrestling MK Plus Ultra or because Mick Moretti was challenging for a title. These are the things. It's the brand as a whole, and like the fan base. And I've learned this too, especially at like the local wrestling events. They're not there for just one person. Like you'll get a pocket of people over here that are there for PPK, and then a pocket of people over here that want to see the Pareja, and then you've got a pocket of people over here that want to see Adam Brooks, even though he's not a nice guy anymore, and I broke his nose, and I don't feel bad about it. You know what I mean? Like. Yeah. And they all come together to create a 500, 600, 700 plus audience. And that's a collective effort because it's the brand. It's the brand that's brought them there. So I think branding is going to be the thing that takes us to the future of professional wrestling in this country.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And that's where I asked the question, because it's like I look at wrestling as a landscape now and see how different it is compared to what it was years ago, where it's like, build a top star. Roman Reigns, you could kind of say, yeah, top star, but even in AEW and other companies, I still think you've got your main event guys, but I always think they're building that, the brand of those three letters, or whatever they may be, for whatever company.
It makes me really excited to think about that being, not being a possibility. I know it's going to be the future for this country. I'm just waiting for the day that it happens. And if I'm watching it from the sidelines, I'm watching it from the sidelines. I'm not greedy. I just want all my friends, all my family within wrestling in Australia, people that have supported, people that are involved in it. I just want everyone to revel in the fact when it does come, because everyone here in this country is so deserving of that opportunity and ability to commit themselves to a higher level, to what they already go way above and beyond for. It just makes me so excited for the future to see what happens.
100%, I agree. But it is that time of the show. The audience is going nuts. It is time for 60 seconds with Piers. How this is going to work, I'm going to ask Robbie a bunch of questions. He's got 60 seconds to answer as many as he can. Robbie, are you ready for me to start the clock?
Shit, I guess so.
Okay. What is your most embarrassing story from school?
I got hit with a trash bin like it was a WWE bin, and it hurt like fuck.
Which celebrity would play you in a movie about your life?
Taron Egerton, because Matt Diamond's mum says I look like him.
5-star hotel or camping?
5-star hotel.
What is something that you enjoy that you were embarrassed to admit that you like?
5-star hotels.
Would you rather win $10 million or live twice as long?
$10 million.
What is your favorite song to rock out at karaoke to?
Oh shit! At the moment, it's it's WAP, wet ass pussy.
Oh Jesus! Name a gross meal combo that you love that no one else does.
Oh, gross meal combo. I do put vinegar on my barbecue chicken. That's probably a strange one for most people.
Okay. Gold class or VMAX?
Gold class.
What cologne, aftershave, or perfume do you use?
Anything by Lush.
What is the shittest gift you have ever given someone?
Shit. Probably most of the ones I've given my wife, because I'm really bad at it.
One has to go. Game of Thrones, Lord of Rings, or Harry Potter?
Fuck. Can it be all of them? I mean, if it's just one, I've never watched Lord of the Rings, never watched Game of Thrones, and I've only watched Harry Potter just because it's been on in the room.
There you go. Last one. In 5 minutes' time, you're being shipped to outer space. What 2 personal belongings do you take with you, excluding human beings?
Oh my God. I would say an old school iPod with all my favorite songs loaded onto it.
Rock on.
And shit. I mean, one of my dogs, you said I can only take 2, so I got to take one of them.
That has been 60 Seconds with Piers with Robbie Eagles. Robbie, thank you so much for coming on and giving up your time. Hour and 10 minutes is just absolutely flown by. I really appreciate you coming on. Would love to get you back on for a part 2 if we can arrange it sometime down the track. But Robbie, where can everyone follow you on social media, support you, get some merch, and support the Sniper in the Skies?
Yeah, I'm pretty much across the board at Robbie Eagles _ on my social media. They can grab merchandise from Wrestler Merch locally here in Australia, or they can go to Pro Wrestling Tees. I do have some stuff on each that's exclusive to both those brands. They can also go to my web store. I do have the exclusive limited edition tees that I sell at the shows recently. It's headshotfightteam.bigcartel.com. And lastly, I just want to make sure that everyone knows that New Japan Pro Wrestling is coming to Oceania for shows in New Zealand and Australia for New Japan Tamashii in November 11th in Christchurch, and November 13th. It's pretty much already sold out, so get the few tickets that remain for Sydney at Liberty Hall, the former Max Watts. It's going to be incredible.
There you go, guys. Go check it out. Also, huge shout out to our sponsor, Sleeves. Make sure you go and check them out. Use that promo code MWAPOD to get a 10% discount. Also, make sure you click that little red button and tap in. We appreciate you. Robbie, I appreciate you being on the show, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Piers. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Take care, guys. Peace.